Okay, now we're ready to go. Okay, so this is Mishlei 14:10, and I mentioned in the shiur chat that this is a pasuk that I think by informal poll is one of the most popular Mishlei pesukim or ideas that or one of the ideas I teach that sticks with students the most in high school, and so I am. I think going to be very incapable of not knowing my own shot on this. And Isaac, are you familiar with my shot on this one?
He's not.
I'm
Oh,
not sure, but it seems familiar.
okay. All right. So then I guess if anyone who is familiar, hold on, now we're having trouble with the TV. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to pause this recording. Okay, yeah. So we're going to try I'll try my best to not let my prejudices get in the way of this analysis, but hopefully we'll get some either new insights into old idea or a new shot. Okay. So this is 14:10. Lev yodea maras nafsho uvesimchaso lo yis arav zar. Who wants to try?
The heart knows what Mara is.
Like maror.
The bitterness
Yeah.
of its soul.
Yeah. So I believe that this is pretty clear. Okay, so I okay. There's two ways to translate this. Okay, so nafsho and atzmo both mean like its own or self. Okay, so I think plain pshat is the heart knows its own bitterness. Okay, but if you want to translate it literally, you can say like literally the bitterness of its or his soul. Okay, uve simchaso lo yis arav zar.
And in its happiness, it will not become mixed with like the stranger.
Yeah. So I think the stranger is the subject, not the object. So I think no stranger will be mixed. Okay. I think that's how it goes. Oh, I forgot to put in the guys. Okay, so let's see here. So Metzuas Tzion, we'll just use this Metzuas Tzion here, says Yisar is Miloshin Taravos, right? So mixture. All right, so that's like what Sean was saying. Sadi Gaon, I have to open up my Sadi Gaon here. Sadi Gaon. Hold on. I'm going to pause this again. Okay, so Sadigon doesn't say anything. And then the Targum, let's look at the Targum says, Liba yadea merirusa denafshe uvechedvase lo misarav nuchra. That's just a straight up translation. Okay, fine. Let's leave the Malbim out of this for now. It's going to take too long to open all Torah. Okay, our scroll. The heart knows its own bitterness, and no stranger will share in its joy. Okay, I assume it's using share in a metaphorical way from Yisarav because share. I don't think you use. Yeah, I mean maybe you can use art like a guarantor, like Kol Yisrael, a Raven Zevazeh, like a partner. But okay, fine. Refer says the heart knows the bitterness of its soul. Okay, so he takes it literally, and with its joy too. I don't know where he gets to. No stranger can interfere. That's interesting. I don't know where it gets to interfere from. And then Alter says the heart knows its own bitterness, and in its joy no stranger mingles. Okay. Yeah, I actually like mingle. We'll mingle. Or mix. Yeah. I also just want to look up. I actually do want to open all Torah here just so I can look up Yisara and just see what the other translations of that are. Give me 1 second. All Torah. Okay. Mishlei 14:10. Okay. Yisarav is went to the BDP. Wait for it. To take on pledge, to give in, to exchange, have fellowship with, share in. Okay, there we go. Yeah, and that he takes it as that there. Yeah. So I guess share is a legitimate translation here. Yeah. All right. So I think these are similar enough to ours that I'm just going to move them up here. Okay. So what are our questions here?
What does nefesh mean? Nafsho?
Okay. So I'm just going to still plant my flag. Okay. Which is that if nafsho doesn't simply mean its own, okay, because that is no one. If I showed you a puzzle that says like atmo, you wouldn't say, why is it talking about bones, right?
I was just asking that nafsho as in like, oh, you
Yeah,
mean
right.
nafsho
Meaning
as
its
in
own.
not like
Yeah, not. I think that's plain shot is its own bitterness.
oh.
So I'll say if nafsho doesn't simply mean its own, then what does nefesh mean here?
And it's okay. So can I just ask like a question on like the word itself in terms
Yeah.
of like so you're saying it's not like a person, desire, or soul, or
Yeah, this is not the word soul. For all intents and purposes, this is not the word soul. It just means its own. Like in other words, it could have said maras atzmo, right? That's just an expression. Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you. I brought this up on Monday night, Mishlei also, but I'll just show it to you
yeah, that's what
here.
I'm asking.
Yeah, right. I'm going to show it to you here also just because it's good for people to know this. So happens to be the best example of this is in Mishlei chapter 6, about a 6 pasuk. Sheish hina sane Hashem v'sheva to avos nafsho. So this does not mean Hashem hates 6 and the 7th is an abomination of his soul. No one says God has a soul. Okay, you don't say nefesh Hashem, right? It means it is an abomination to his very being, right? Nafsho just means himself. It is a abomination to him. So like that's like a standard use of nafsho. It's just not one that people seem to be familiar with.
Maras Asma?
Its own bitterness. The heart knows its own bitterness.
Atma? Is that what it is? No, you before you.
Yeah, Asma means yeah. Nafsho and Asma are
the same?
yeah, are the same. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I'm not even just to make sure that we don't get confused. I'm just going to make this into a footnote. Okay, because I don't want people to think that it means soul.
So isn't the question like why put nafsho instead of asma?
No, this is just normal Hebrew usage. Yeah, normal Hebrew usage means nafsho means self or its own. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's do real questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what is the heart?
Okay, right. What is the heart in this context? Right. What is the lave in this context? And as we know, it can either mean like feelings, mind, or something in between. In between, right? Yeah.
How does it know its bitterness?
Yeah.
And what is its bitterness?
Okay. How does the heart know its own bitterness? Okay. And by the way, I mean, if you just had to like go based on like if you had to place your money on what heart means in this context, what would you think it means? Maybe this is an unfair question. Okay, fine. All right. Because I was going to say that like I think you could make two arguments. You can make the argument that it means feelings because it's talking about feelings in the pasuk, or you can say it's talking about mind because it says yodea, and typically you don't ascribe yedea to non-mind entities. All right, fine. So I guess it's not so clear. And then what is bitterness or its bitterness?
Never mind, I was gonna ask that.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess the second half of the pasuk, and it's happiness. And what's happiness exactly?
The hearts.
Oh, the heart's happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you could ask, what is the heart's happiness?
Yeah. What is the heart's happiness?
Or what is the stranger?
Yeah. Who is or what is this czar? Right. Yeah. And I also don't know the strict difference between czar and Nachri. Like I think those are both words for strangers. So I don't know. I'm just gonna throw in there like why is the term czar used used as opposed to like Nachri or Afer?
Translate that.
Yeah, no problem, right? Yeah.
And mingle. I mean,
Yeah. What does it mean? What does Yisarav mean?
what exactly is he mingling with?
It with the
heart
simcha.
also? The simcha?
Uve simchaso lo yisarv zar, and in its simcha, no stranger will
Yeah.
mingle.
When does the stranger mingle? Is it only? I mean, I guess that's more like in what ways are these two things opposite? Is it saying that it mixes in the case of the bitterness?
Okay.
Or is it?
Yeah, so I'll phrase this question structurally, okay, which is how do the two halves relate to each other? Okay, so is the the predicate in each half exclusive to that subject? So for example, the heart knows its own bitterness, but it doesn't know its simcha, its joy, and a stranger doesn't mingle in its happiness, but does mingle in its bitterness. Okay, or, and I think it's clear from the way I'm saying it, like that it's simpler, right? Or does each half apply? Does each predicate apply to each subject, right? Each predicate apply to each subject, right? In other words, the heart knows its own bitterness and its own simcha, and no stranger can mingle in its bitterness or in its simcha, which I think is like that'd be the pshat way to say it. Yeah. Okay. I think there's only one more major question. Okay, that is true. Yeah. So who is the audience? What is the subject? What is the practical application?
Who
Okay.
is this pasuk referring to exactly? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right. So I think that would be included in what is the subject. Well, that is actually that. Okay, this is a potential for a new angle. Okay, so I as much as I teach this pasuk, I have never learned it in context. Okay, so let's just review the context here. So the last couple pesukim we had were about avoiding or various types of fools, right? So I think that started with, looks like with Vav. Bikesh leit chachma v'ayin v'das l'nava nakal. Lech minegel ish ksil uval yadata sifsei das. Chachmas arum having darko v'velas ksilim mirma. Evilim yalit asham uvin yisharim ratzon. And then you have Lev Yodea Maras Nafsha of Simchas Leisar Zar. So, if I just read that cluster of pesukim, I would say that this doesn't have to do with it, but I think it's worth asking the question. And then the next pasuk is going to be Beis Roshaim Yishamed V'Ohel Yesharim Yafriach. So I would say, is this connected to the prior pesukim?
Sorry, what was the theme of the prior pesukim?
Which were about various Mishlei fools. Yeah. Okay, but I think the other question, the other major question. No, that's a good question actually. Yeah. What are the opposites? I think the other major question is, what is the Havamina?
Oh.
Okay, because clearly we need to be told this, so it can't be obvious, right? Yeah.
Is it obvious?
You can think it's obvious if you want. I think there are enough things that we don't know what it's talking about, certainly in the second half,
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm saying it's not obvious.
I'm saying it's not obvious, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm usually the guy who thinks.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Okay, what do you say?
Can I make a move?
Yeah.
All right. So based off of like what we're saying Monday night in terms of like it, the heart knows it's, like nafsho. Like I know it doesn't mean it's not, but I think you say bitterness maybe it could mean it's desires.
It's desires.
Yeah, bitterness. Like what's? I mean, the heart knows its own bitterness. I mean, like the heart knows its own desires. I mean, the bitterness is desires.
Why would desires be characterized as bitterness?
I mean, what's bitter?
Like bitter is a specific flavor, right?
Yeah, I think desires can be bitter.
They can be, but you're trying to say that it's referring to all desires?
I think well, all desires, if it's taken out of proportion, then you take out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has desires, and it can be a strain on your perfection.
Okay.
You can't manage it.
So you're saying that the heart knows it's
What I mean is, I'm just using desires as like to bring out the idea, but bitterness can just mean it's his own internal, struggles.
Can you close that door? Thanks. His own internal struggles. Okay, struggle I see is for bitterness, but I mean it sounds like you're saying lots of things.
Yeah, it's included. We're just saying desires are included in that, but struggle, just use the word struggle.
Okay, those seem like two completely different things to me. So I'll write down struggle because that's the most compelling. I just don't see how bitterness can. Yeah, I have no idea what you're saying. So, so bitterness equals struggles or conflicts. Okay, which are bitter. Okay, good. Because those just one. Okay, just one. Okay, that's fine. All right, that's a good move.
Like you want to give your idea.
I know it's very hard. I worked. There's a Gemara about. I forgot why he did this, but one of the Tanaim or Amoraim learned either in some place or learned with someone, and then he did 40 fasts to forget all of his learning. I don't remember why, but this is the. But again, this was the blessing and the curse of Rabbi Moskowitz. Is he had a bad memory, and you could learn a pasuk with him one day, and then the next day he would give a completely different interpretation. He said, Rabbi Moskowitz, yesterday you said the other thing, and he said, I don't remember what I said yesterday. So there it was. We would get a fresh idea each time. And for me, it's funny. It happens to be worse when I teach something in high school. Like I don't remember a lot of the ideas that I've taught here. And I think part of it is psychologically, I'm offloading it to the recordings, but when I teach it in high school and I read assignments about it and I teach it year after year, then it just drills that shot into my head.
Well, so. Teach it year after year, the same puzzle.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have something for the second half.
Sure.
Which is that a stranger for me seems to be defined by their lack of vested interest or knowledge in whatever is happening for you.
Yeah.
So they cannot really understand the true happiness, and therefore they're not going to mix in with that, or they're not going to be in any way related to that. But I'm not entirely sure what the practical application of that is.
So I'll just note that as a possible route for stranger. So stranger is someone who how do you say doesn't have a vested interest in you?
Yeah.
Okay. Interest in you, and that will impede their ability to relate to your happiness. And I put that in general terms because I don't think we're taking a stance on what that means yet.
Especially it doesn't seem like it has a negative, like the first half is just positive and negative. It seems like one.
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna add this to our questions as well, which is what I think this is actually in the practical application here. It's not even clear whether this is a good or a bad decision, right? Yeah. It seems like it's pointing out a phenomenon.
Yeah. And it's happiness. What's the it again?
The heart.
The heart.
Yeah. By the way, so I'm just gonna write this here, which is I think plain pshat is the heart knows its own bitterness and joy, and no stranger can mingle in either. Meaning, I think you just have to put the each half into each half.
I think maybe you can say just along the lines of what I was saying before, he knows the struggles or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe the heart, I want just I guess the guy knows or girl whatever, and knows his potential.
Potential, okay.
Actually, I don't know about that because I don't think everyone lives up to their potential. I think maybe they know what they're capable of, in a given circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
and having that realization is important. And sometimes if you are overly confident in it, then you can miss some steps, and it could be your downfall. And if you're too conservative, then you can lose out on the opportunity. So you have to, I guess, just know yourself.
Okay, so just the one step I'm not seeing here is how is that knowing its own bitterness?
The bitterness just means your weaknesses,
Your
your
weaknesses. Okay.
struggles, your flaws,
Okay.
your imperfections.
Okay.
If you know yourself from, no, it's hard to know your flaws versus
hmm
your strengths.
Okay.
But if you know your flaws, then like you'll be more in line with.
Yeah, I hear your idea. I'm having a hard time seeing this in the bitterness and happiness. Like,
Right.
I feel like there's a lot of easier ways to say it. Like, it knows its own sins, its own iniquities, its own imperfect. I feel like there are a lot of ways to say the idea that you're saying that bitterness and happiness are like feelings, right? That's what bitterness is, right? Vaimaru es chayehem, they embittered their lives. So like the same problem I have on your other shot is that like this doesn't seem to be what the words are saying. Yeah.
You're saying bitterness is just a feeling?
It's a feeling, yeah. Right.
Right. Okay. So I have an approach.
Sure.
I think that the pasuk is talking to the czar,
Okay.
and it's saying the heart knows its own bitterness and joy, meaning a person doesn't need to do anything to familiarize themselves with their own joy or their own suffering.
Okay.
But it's only through connecting with other people. People think that they can just instantly connect to another person
Yeah.
and relate to them, and
Yeah.
that no true relation can only happen through shifting out of the relationship of stranger into something that's more intimate.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so that is a valid approach, at least insofar as it explains the words here. Okay, so Sean is saying that so the audience is the czar, and the havamina is that you can relate to someone and their emotions as a czar, right?
Mhm.
The pasuk is telling you that you need to form a more intimate connection in order to have that type of relationship. Okay, all right, that's a good approach. That fits into the words. Yeah. So the follow-up question then is, what does that consist of? Like, what is that? What? I mean, obviously, it's probably a spectrum, but like, what are the qualities that are czar-like, and what are the qualities that are the opposite?
Yeah. So I would say that the czar is.
Oh, sorry. And then one more question, also, just to throw the other question, and then, why does it emphasize that the heart knows its own, like in positive terms? Because I see the negative, but yeah.
Yeah. So I would suggest that I'll start with that last question, which is that the knowing of one's own self can sometimes be an impediment to being able to see another person's
Interesting.
reality. That
Okay.
if you are trying to fit what another person is saying into your own the stuff that you know about yourself,
Yeah.
that's not necessarily knowing them, that's knowing you, and that's
Yeah.
not going to create any sort of relationship.
That's very interesting. My idea is almost the opposite, but I don't think that they're necessarily contradictory. But certainly as a reading of the puzzle is the opposite. Yeah.
I have another approach.
Sure. Yeah, I'm withholding because I think we'll see each other's ideas clearer when I say my idea.
I think I know what you mean. But feelings. So is it? I guess my question is like, is it possible for a man to know what makes him feel good and what makes him, feel better?
I should hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think maybe you don't look, based off of like our experiences we know, but
Yeah.
like, and there may be future, things that we don't know,
Yeah.
which is new, but like just keep it simple. Like I think most people will know, and I think in knowing what makes you, I guess upset or happy can be good because then it can put you on a path of where you can avoid those things on how to function in your daily life.
Okay, that's good. So that really fits the first half, which is that like a person knows their own like the things that make them bitter.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the question is, what is it saying about the stranger?
So I think the stranger is, like the like the opposite of what you're feeling. Like if someone I guess wants to like put you down when you're happy, like it's funny that it's saying like no sugar will mingle, meaning like if you let it mingle then it's gonna upset you. Like, I guess like it's somehow I don't have it fully thought out, but like my intuition is saying it's like a mindset type of thing. It's like somehow it's like just like brush it off or something. I don't know.
Okay, so let me write down what is what do you call it? What is what I know for sure. So so the first half is saying that each person knows what makes them feel bitter. Okay.
Oh, maybe no stranger will mingle, and I mean like if you know someone in your life who makes you feel what you don't want to feel, then just remove them.
Okay, so just so with simchaso lo yisarav zar, and no stranger will mingle in its joy. Okay, so are you saying that the stranger is the cause of the bitter feeling, and like that could interfere? Like who said the interfere thing?
Not the only cause, but there are some people in your life, who just put you down. Like,
right.
Like for instance, like I'm a guy who has a lot of ambition, and like anyone who tells me like you can't do that, well, I'm gonna tell them to go fly a kite because I've trained myself to remove them from my life or ignore what they're telling me because I don't need someone in my life to put me down because it doesn't make me feel good.
Okay. Okay, I hear what you're saying. All right, that I think that's the best of the approaches that you've given so far. Okay, so you want to hear my approach? Okay, so this pasuk is Mishlei, is Mishlei's stance on empathy. Okay, and the truth could be stated in a very, very simple way. You can't feel other people's feelings. Okay, so I think that that people feel like they can't feel people's feelings, like I feel your pain, but really, what are you doing when you say I feel your, like what are you doing instead of feeling their pain? You're feeling your own pain, right? So what happens is, so there are certain things that there are certain experiences that we can share. Okay, so for example, we can both see the same object. Okay, we can both touch the same object. We can both think of the same idea, right? And the clearest example of that is in math. If we're discussing triangles, it's the same concept in our minds, and yeah, there are certain other concepts where you're bringing your own subjectivity to the table, but like the goal of all learning is to like be able to apprehend the same objects of thought. Okay, but with feelings, you can only ever feel your own feelings, and the most you can do is use your own feelings as a basis for interpreting other people's feelings and attempting to bridge an unbridgeable gap. Okay, so for example, let's say you see somebody crying. Okay, so and I'm not saying that you do this consciously, but like that when you're crying, then you're sad, and what your own sadness feels like. Okay, so you attempt to relate to that person based on their feelings of sadness, based on your experiences of sadness. Okay, but the key is that Mishlei is trying. The point is, each of us at the end of the day can only feel our own feelings. So any instance of empathy is an act of interpretation. Okay, and if you view it as an act of perception, that's when you make mistakes. Is if you feel like you can feel other people's feelings in the same way that you can see something, that's a mistake, because that's negating the fact that you're interpreting their feelings. If you view it though as if you view empathy as a matter of interpretation, so then that opens you up to the possibilities that maybe my interpretation is wrong, maybe my experiences are influencing the way that I relate to this data in a different way than this person relates to this data. Maybe and the mistake could be made in the opposite way as well. As I think that in one of the mistakes that happens in relationships is that people feel like the other person should be able to see their own feelings, So in other words, they or feel them directly, and I think that that's a mistake. Is that I mean the classic trope, and I'm going to be sexist here, right? Is like the wife or the girlfriend expects her husband or boyfriend to be able to instantly feel what she's feeling, and like be able to know her emotional, but he's interpreting things in a different way, or he's not, like whether because he's a different person or because he's a man or because he doesn't, it's unfair for you to demand of someone else that they see your feelings and that they feel them. Like communicate, like all communication, it's a two-way street, and there are pitfalls in terms of like miscommunication. So that's what the pasuk is saying, is that the heart knows its own bitterness and joy, and no stranger can mingle in that, and therefore it is incumbent upon you to make sure that you're interpreting things, you're striving to interpret things in another person's feelings to the best of your ability, and you're aware that you may be mistaken. And likewise, if you want someone else to know what you're feeling, you have to take steps to make sure that you're making that clear, and you can't rely on these assumptions that they're just going to suddenly like know or see your feelings.
Something a Facebook post.
So I wrote this up as a blog post, and I just want to see now. I didn't look at it before I came here. I'm using it on my on the old blog because the formatting is probably better. I think I called it. What was that? Let me reformat it for the new one. Oh, did I not write this on the old one? Hold on a second. Oh yeah, true empathy. Okay, yeah. So let me just see how I formulated it here. So I wrote, two people can see the same object or hear the same sound, but they cannot experience the same feeling. Each individual is confined to the solitary world of his or her own emotional experiences. The most we can do is to observe the other person's behavior and make inferences about his or her internal state based on our own previous emotional experiences. True empathy, i.e. actually feeling what another person feels, is impossible. Let me stop here for a second. When I say interpret, I don't necessarily mean a conscious, rational process, right? What makes a good therapist, and from what I've heard, I don't know if there are studies on this, but it seems to be like, from what I've heard, that there are more women therapists than men therapists. And one of the reasons why is because women tend to have stronger abilities to have empathy than men. And so they're quicker and more adept at that process of like tuning into their own feelings and using that to like gauge another person's feelings, but that's like an automatic process. And presumably this is evolutionary, that a mother has to be able to like be in tune with her kids to know what their needs are because they're not verbal, so presumably that's why. Therefore, you should exercise caution when assessing the emotional states of others, and remember that you are not actually perceiving their feelings, but are making inferences about their feelings based on your own experiences. Inferences which are prone to error and subjective bias. Likewise, it is unreasonable to expect others to automatically feel the emotions you are experiencing, and it is unfair to burden them with that demand. So I'll give you a real world example. So I know myself, and around, I don't know myself fully, but like I know that around this time, I guess usually like around Thanksgiving, and around like usually January, I tend to get very burnt out from teaching. And so I am prone to snapping if I perceive that someone is not being respectful of my like time or my emotional state. But what I catch myself doing is irrationally expecting them to be able to see that I'm on the brink of burnout and to like relate to me accordingly. So for example, this happened like 2 weeks ago, maybe, or last week, I can't remember, is that a ninth grade boy, okay, who like, I can't expect them to have emotional intelligence, okay, like was like pestering me about regrading a resubmitted assignment that he had, and I snapped at him in writing, I said like he was like, when are you going to grade this one? I said, I'll grade it when I have time. And then I like listed all the other stuff that comes before it, and so like, but in retrospect, it's like I was expecting him to be able to relate to me and see the full scope of my emotional life, when that's just not what like first of all, I'm just a high school teacher, and he only relates to me through that one prism, and he's only going to relate to me as like a provider of a service, which is grades, so like of course he's not going to see that. So it was my foolishness of like expecting him to like see that. Yeah, David?
There's a question I understand the pasuk.
Yeah.
So for you, the Mara, Nafsho, and Simchat Torah, those are really interchangeable.
So the way I would say it is, yes, it's interchangeable, but I think the reason why it's saying sadness and happiness is it's like the A to Z of emotions, meaning happiness and sadness mean the full spectrum of all emotions.
Yes, and I mean, so my question is that it could have been Levio de Simchat Torah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're interchangeable in the pasuk. Correct. Yeah. Let me just see if if I wrote any good examples here. Oh yeah, so I brought in Rebbe's parenting shiur. I said another common example of this mistake can be seen in parenting, especially with parents of younger children. When a young child cries, the parent sometimes overreacts. This overreaction is based on a faulty line of reasoning. Since I only cry like that when I'm in a state of unbearable pain, therefore my child must also be in a state of unbearable pain, and I must address it by doing everything in my power to make that pain stop. Okay, we call that projection. In reality, the child's internal world is completely different than that of an emotionally mature adult. Yes, an adult would have to be in a state of terrible suffering to break down in tears, but for a child, it might take nothing more than minor annoyance. Similarly, an adult might underreact to a child crying. In reality, the child might be experiencing a horribly traumatic experience, but the adult assumes, what's the big deal? If something this trivial happened to me, I get over it in a second. Therefore, my child is the one who's overreacting and had better get over it pronto. Both mistakes stem from a lack of awareness that the parent is interpreting the child's behavior based on the parent's own experience, right? It's just the awareness that empathy is based on interpretation can just give you pause and say, am I interpreting correctly or not? Let me just see if there are other relevant examples here. Yeah, moods is another thing, right? I'm just going to read this here. Another practical ramification of this mistake occurs when we unfairly hold others responsible for knowing what we're feeling. For example, one spouse might assume that the other spouse knows exactly what he or she is feeling and become hurt or angry when treated a certain way, saying, how dare you say or do something like that to me? Don't you know I'm in a bad mood? As if one's internal state were as easy to perceive as the color of the wall or the temperature of water. Ironically, this accusation of lacking empathy itself stems from a lack of empathy. The failure to recognize that the other person's emotions, experiences, and assumptions might have caused him or her to misinterpret the behavioral signs that he or she observed. Again, the key is to recognize that the most we can do is interpret someone else's emotions, not perceive or experience them. Yeah. So this has wide-ranging implications. And I do think, going back to Ariel's question about, Ariel's question about the practical application of the pasuk. This pasuk, I think, is one of those pesukim that is just pointing out a phenomenon, and it's not stating how you should apply it. It's saying, hey, be aware of this phenomenon and apply accordingly. Yeah. All right. So now let's compare and contrast what you were saying, what I'm saying, because I do think they complement each other. Yeah. So Sean was saying that you can't relate to someone as a czar, and you need to have a more intimate connection in order to relate to their simcha and their bitterness. Yeah.
And I was also saying, I think another part, which I think there's two parts of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
There's the experience on the part of the self, and then there's the experience on the part of relating to others.
Yeah.
I think approaching it more on the part of relating to others, that you need to be able to realize that your experiences and your way of viewing the world is not the way that they view the world.
Right.
And so that is going to be the thing which is limiting your ability to have a relationship with them.
And I had to quote myself. I said this without thinking, but I think it's a good phrase, is the only way to relate to them is to attempt to bridge an unbridgeable gap. But the attempt actually does build a bridge. It's like the imagery I'm getting here is like, let's say you have a chasm, okay, and you build a bridge from both sides, or even one side to the other. The two sides of the bridge never actually connect, but standing with a small gap in between you is infinitely better than standing with a larger gap. And through discussion and through hearing about their experiences and through forming connections outside of the particular area that you're trying to understand, you can build that bridge. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you can't share in their feelings. And just to give another example of this, even when I think another place that people make this mistake is when similar things happen that society has default assumptions about, and so people make assumptions that you're going to relate to this in the same way that I do. I'm going to pause the recording and give an example of this.
And I also think with this pasuk, if you do try to emotionally be emotionally related to someone in a way that's improper and incorrect, not how that person that you're trying to give empathetic toward is feeling, it could actually just worsen matters.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to feel so bad, and the person is not feeling so bad, and they just don't. There's just added frustration, added more tension that's coming from that. You actually do a worse job if you are.
Yes, correct.
Exactly right.
Yeah, right. That's a good point as well. I would also say that I think this is closer stemming from Sean's idea, but I think it applies to my idea as well. Is I do think that any means of fostering identification with a person outside of the particular emotion that you're trying to perceive, will go a long way in in helping make your own emotional read of them more accurate. In other words, the more you can identify with them and like you were saying before, Sean, like knowing what their world is and getting familiar with who they are as a full picture, that like, even though you're not working on the specifics, it'll be better. Like all of these initiatives to try to, let's say, like make peace between, let's say, Israelis and Palestinians, like I do think that there is a tremendous value in just humanizing these people and like getting them to interact with each other in ways that are outside of the particular area of conflict that you're working on, because that opens up the channels for like relating to the other person's emotions.
On that, there's a book that I read called Never Split the Difference, Negotiate as if you're left dependent on it.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about he calls it tactical empathy. And empathizing with them through specific questions and restating what they're saying,
right?
Just get how they just get a sense of how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And he said he's used it on hostage negotiations.
Right.
And like you don't even have to meet them face to face,
right?
Through the phone. And
that's actually I like that term, because I think there are lots of tactics you can use for fostering this type of empathy. All right, last comment for today is Isaac, and then I got to stop.
Yeah, I was just gonna say about like the stuff about the conflict with Israel. I think a lot of Americans who are anti-Israel are making this exact mistake.
Mm-hmm.
They assume that people are acting based on what they would feel if they were in the situation.
Right.
Like the people are rising up because of oppression or whatever,
right?
And because they don't relate to what they might actually be feeling, and I think it's exactly this mistake.
I think so as well. All right, so Bleed Netter will find new interpretations tomorrow, but that's my interpretation. Okay, all right, have a good day. Yeah.